Hello and welcome to everyone. Welcome to the How to Be an Active Ally in the Workplace session today by Hone. I hope that you are all safe and healthy today, and I'm looking forward to this discussion. My name is Dominique Hollins, and I go by pronoun she, her, and I am joined by the excellent Karen Fleshman, who
Hi,
also
everybody.
and we're going to get started as we talk about what does it actually mean to be an active ally in the workplace, especially in today's current environment. So first, as we just got it started, we wanted you all to chat where you are from. Where are you calling from today? We want to know how many different states are represented or different places around the world are represented today so we can see where you all are calling from. And we also would love to know one thing you are hoping to take away from today's conversation. And Karen, feel free to read out some of our responses.
Sure. We have Sam from San Diego, she, her. Kevin from Wisconsin, he, his. Jillian in Vermont, she, her. Rachel in Bay Area, California. Adrian Cooper, NYC. We have New Jersey, Sandra,
Nashville, Vermont,
Santa Clara,
Islanders.
Nashville.
Yep. We have
It's
wonderful representation. Thank you all for calling in. I see we got Olympia, Washington, Los Angeles, Brooklyn in the house. I feel like I have to say Brooklyn like that. I don't know. Portland, Oregon.
listening to hip
Hello, I'm
hop.
working.
One
Melinda,
thing I'm hoping to learn how to talk to people about being an ally in ways that don't make them feel defensive or on the spot.
yeah, that is huge.
Aurora,
And wonderful.
Colorado,
How to
where
how
I
to
grew up.
best practice allyship. I love it. Thanks, Andrea. With our new DEI initiative and working towards a more inclusive culture, we want some first steps to help move in that direction. What does allyship look like in the virtual and remote world? Oh, that is huge. When we're not regularly in each other's company, that's a huge takeaway. I'm hoping to take away how to deal with pushback or resistance from others or turning pushback into allyship. These are some powerful takeaways. Karen, let's make sure we keep these in mind.
Yes.
And also, we hope to have a Q&A portion that will allow you all to engage with us as well. So how about we get started so that we can all discuss why we're having this conversation right now? I know some of us have heard the term before, but why is this so important today? First, I want to introduce and welcome you to Hone, the management training platform, which we like to call ourselves the Peloton of online learning. Our mission is to democratize, access to the world's most impactful learning experiences. And that includes what we're going to experience today. That is live virtual classes. So not just the live discussion we're going to have, but we have a series of courses that you get to choose from on your schedule when it is beneficial, when it works for you. And then also real impact and real results. The interactive nature of our coursework is to help to further instill the learnings that we are hoping that you take away from our sessions, just like today. And also with some of the companies that we work with, we hope to continue to expand our relationship and the classes that we provide. So if your company is looking to have these type of sessions, we're always welcome to have you. I am Dominique Hollins, and I go by pronouns she, her. If you all are unfamiliar with why we are announcing our pronouns, is an acknowledgement and in solidarity with the members of the trans community and non-binary community. It takes away the burden for them to have to always identify what their gender is. So we all do it, then it normalizes this process and it doesn't other them. So I am Dominique, and in an act of solidarity, I add she, her everywhere I can in an effort to do that. I'm excited to moderate today's discussion for a number of reasons. I am a home coach, but I also have a business operator background where I was focusing on doing my job in the day to day, but realizing there was this thing around. And what I didn't realize at the time was the weight of systemic racism. So now I am the CEO and the founder of my own consulting firm where I work with executive teams and members on the front line to help them build that DEI strategy. So the feeling that I had as a Black bisexual woman, millennial in corporate America, the resistance to my identity, I want to ensure that no one else experiences what I and people like myself have experienced. As a co-founder of our collective, I put together a march because the work that I do is in service of the young woman you see me in the photo with. The children of our generation, God, thank you for Gen Z. What they are doing to help mobilize us is the key to how we move forward. So the way that we support them is one of the ways that this image reflects that. And then lastly, I am personally dedicated to personal and professional growth through human connection. So if I can get you for just a moment to reshape how you think about people or people that are not familiar to you, then for me, that is progress, and that's my way of contribution. Karen?
Oh, thank you so much, Dominique. And I would just add, everyone who's not familiar with our collective, please look it up. This was Dominique's vision that the Black and Brown ERGs across Silicon Valley would unite so that they could build on each other's power and create a much more powerful entity. And it's in operation. It's been in operation for 3 years now, and they all come out and march together in the Martin Luther King March on Martin Luther King Day here in San Francisco. And they do fantastic programming throughout the year, and especially during Black History Month. And it's just such an incredible, beautiful thing to see this community flourish. And thank you for creating that.
Wow.
So I'm Karen Fleshman, also she, her. I'm excited to join this discussion. You know, I'm a single soccer mom. I'm a mentor, activist, entrepreneur. I'm an attorney. I'm an author, educator, a proud San Franciscan, and I'm someone who tries to be a role model for white women in how we can engage in active and not performative allyship. And it's been my great honor throughout my career. I've worked in majority people of color organizations, largely reporting to women of color supervisors and serving people of color. And through that, I became a mentor to many young adults of color as they embarked on careers in corporate America. And it was hearing their stories about the kinds of challenges they were experiencing in the workplace, a lot of it coming from women who look like me, that made me decide to shift my career focus from preparing young adults of color for corporate work environments to preparing corporate work environments for young adults of color. And that is what Racy Conversations is designed to create. We are a workplace workshop facilitation company to inspire the anti-racist generation. And I'm now creating an online community to help us really bridge. You know, there's so many amazing, amazing change agents out there. And I feel like we need a safe online space to communicate with each other, to learn from each other, and to build. And so I'm super excited about that Racy Conversations online space. The photo is me and amazing women from all across the country. This is us engaging in civil disobedience 2 weeks ago in front of the Senate building, you know, in protest of the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett to the US Supreme Court. And I don't know about you, but this week has just been really heavy, really heavy as we head into the election. I feel like kind of you know, like they say, post-traumatic stress disorder. I feel like I'm getting pre-stress traumatic stress disorder, like just thinking about what this election outcome is going to be. And I'm so grateful to all of you for joining us here for this conversation, because I think this is what it's going to take to shift our country, is a grassroots movement of people like you and me who decide, you know what, I'm going to use my privilege for good. And I'm going to use my privilege to shift power and to transform our country from the grassroots up. So thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you, Karen, for having so much more of a comprehensive introduction. Listen, a lot of you may or may not know me, and if you don't, you're going to get to know me. So thank you, Karen, and let's kick it off. Why are we here today? Yes, there are many ways to be an ally for many communities. In this moment, we have a system of unrest, of civil unrest as a result of police brutality that unfortunately continues. A lot of the reasons why we're doing this racial and social justice work is because of the murder of George Floyd by the police who leaned on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And while we thought that was devastating enough, unfortunately, Walter Wallace Jr. lost his life yesterday, and he was believed to have a bipolar disorder. And there was another way to handle that. Well, alternatively, Dylan Roof, a white man who killed 9 Black people in a church, was taken to Burger King after he was caught with his assault weapon. So when you continue to see these disparities, it doesn't stop at home. It comes into the workplace as we're looking at the emotional and psychological impact of what we're doing. And so we want to keep that front and center, because in this moment, we need you to be an ally against racial and social injustice. On top of that, 2020 has dealt a hand of cards no one would have asked for in any game. Not only is the world being devastated by a pandemic, but the United States represents roughly 4% of the global population and more than 20% of its cases. The Black Lives Matter movement isn't going anywhere anytime soon, because the brutality we continue to face, the iniquity both in the workplace and in our communities and the financial system and in the educational system and in the medical system, there is no reprieve. There is no release. There is no escaping the trauma for the Black community. And so that continues in the midst of a pandemic where we're experiencing a higher degree of devastation. The unemployment rate significantly and disproportionately affects us as well, which 2 to 1 um, being the unemployment rate of Blacks to white. And what we find for the Center of American Progress is that the 2 to 1 disproportionate rate of unemployment is not just right now. It has been happening since 1972. And they say there's no way it can happen unless it was intentional. And then lastly, we have one of the most polarizing political elections in our nation's history, wrought with misinformation and lies that makes it very difficult to unify a nation that needs it now more than ever. So the degree of urgency we're talking about here today is what we would like to focus on. And we recognize that other communities are suffering too, and that is not to take away from them, but is with an urgency that I say to that right now, the Black and Brown community, specifically the Black community, is at a peril that we haven't seen since probably the civil rights movement, and it hasn't stopped since then. Karen, anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, yeah, I would just say, prior to COVID, median Black net wealth in our country was projected to be zero by 2053. Latinx median net wealth was projected to be zero by 2073 without significant intervention. And we know that COVID and the disproportionate economic impact on Black and Latinx communities is only going to accelerate that timetable. And all this is occurring as we become a majority people of color country. So by 2044, we will be majority people of color. Already here in the Bay Area, we're majority people of color. In the state of California, we're majority people of color. And we have got to figure out a way to transform as a society and for white people to relinquish our grip on power and resources and create a society of abundance for everyone. And I know it is possible. And I feel really, at times I feel super discouraged, and then I feel so encouraged when I see the fierceness of those young Black people with the megaphones this summer organizing for the first time, and the fact that people came out in all 50 states, that it was in small towns, on Native American reservations, that the Latinx community came out in unity, that the Asian American community came out in unity. And I feel hopeful when you look at also the voter participation rates already among young Americans, that there is the ultimate okay boomer generational shift in power is happening, and that's what's giving me hope.
Perfect. And you're absolutely right, which is going to help us engage in this conversation today, because what we're facing affects all of us. because injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And just because it's not you today doesn't mean it can't be you tomorrow. And so in order to respect this conversation, we ask you to just be present, participate as best you can, put your questions in the chat box. We will get to them if we can, and that this is a safe space. And what we're looking to cover today is what's the difference between performative allyship and effective allyship? It's one thing to be active, but are you being effective? Two, how can allyship help to build an inclusive culture on your team? Do you realize that when people come into the office, their experiences from home come with them only to the extent that they can manage it? And what we're facing cannot be ignored any longer. Part three is, what are actionable strategies you can use to be an effective ally within your organizations? And so I want to start with a stat. Karen, this was from the Lean In study that we talked about. Let me just be clear for our audience. Is it a black and white thing? No, it's an all of us thing. But what has been practiced in our nation's history is that black and white are on opposite ends of the spectrum, and that everybody is trying to move as close to whiteness as possible, which means that the Black community is disproportionately affected in many ways. So what the Lean In study, they did a study that showed Black women in the workplace. And what it found is that 80% of white women believe that they are actually allies to Black women. But less than, well, actually, let me read directly from the study. More than 80% of white women and men say they see themselves as allies to people of color at work. But less than half of Black women feel that they personally have strong allies at work, and barely a quarter think that it's mostly accurate that Black women have strong allies in the workplace. White employees hold most of the power in corporate America. One of the most fundamental ways they can use that power is as allies, advocating for people of color. Challenging racism is a basic act of allyship. But even though most white employees believe they are allies, only 40% have ever spoken out against racism at work. This is the State of Black Women in Corporate America report from Lean In. If anyone would like to read the study more comprehensively, I encourage you to do that. But I just wanted you to hear those stats. There is the perception that some white people are doing enough, or they think they're being an ally, and then the reality that we just don't feel that. Karen, did you want to add anything to that before you and I go into our story? Really
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah, I remember also reading a quote around the same time this study came out this summer from a Black woman who said that another statistic from the same study is that Black women say that the workplace is where they most frequently experience racism. And this Black woman professional said, you know, if I go to a restaurant or a store and I feel like I'm being discriminated against, I can turn around and leave, right? But if I come into work every day, it's not so easy, right? That is the place of our livelihood. It's the place where we spend the majority of our day. It's the place we go to as adults to learn, to grow, and to give our unique gifts to the world, to share our talent. And so if Black women are subjected to racism in the workplace, it is incumbent on all of us to transform and to stop that from happening and to become those true allies. And we know that when Black women are thriving, everybody's going to be thriving because, you know, Black women are the most marginalized people in the workplace. So let's work on that. Let's listen to each other's stories and let's actually transform from performative allies to true allies.
And I would take it a step further to say Black trans women are the most marginalized in the community. Basically, whatever your intersectionality is, every added layer of intersectional identity multiplies the experience, the negativity of the experiences that the negativity of the discrimination that you may experience. So Karen, I'm going to stop sharing the slide now, and I just want you and I to have the coffee chat we talked about. So if we can do this in about 10 to 15 minutes, not only talk through our story, what is performative versus effective allyship? How does it show up in the workplace? If we could do that in like 10 or 15 minutes and try to answer a few questions, I think that'll be great. But if you could just quickly kick us off with your memory of how we met, and then I'll tell you my response. And for everyone who is joining us today, We are just an example of one form of allyship, actually many forms of allyship. She's a white woman, I'm a Black woman. We have two generational differences. I'm a member of the LGBTQ community. So the form of allyship that we've developed is specific to us. This can be a visual representation of what it could look like for you if you just opened yourself up to people you otherwise may not engage with. So Karen, kick us off.
Yeah, so similar to many of my ally type relationships or relationships across difference, I had to be the one to initiate, right? I participate in what I used to call naturally occurring all white social circles. But what I've come to realize is that they aren't at all naturally occurring. They are the result of years and years of discrimination and racist policy that led to segregated housing, educational environments, so that and as you grow up, you find yourself kind of, even if you live in a very diverse region of the country, like the Bay Area, when you get invited to a social event, almost everybody there is white. And it doesn't matter if it's a women's networking event, a kid's birthday party, this is who your cohort kind of is. So in the case of meeting Dominique, I go to a lot of these diversity in tech panels and events. I'm always interested in hearing what people have to say. And so I attended one of these. And when Dominique spoke, I mean, my heart just soared. She's so inspiring and so passionate and so personal and also super political. And so when the panel was over, I made a beeline, as did many other people, made a beeline over to meet this woman. Who is this person? She's so amazing.
And thank you, Karen. And so now here's my experience on the other side. So Karen
Mhm.
comes up to me and I'm like, so let me give a little bit of context. I grew up on the south side of Chicago from a Southern Black family where, in order to protect me, I got the talk as a kid, which meant white people stay over there, Black people stay over here. This is what happened to Emmett Till from Chicago. So, like, when I interact with certain white people, as a part of me constantly working through my own bias that I was taught for my safety, it's still bias. I saw Karen and my body tensed up. So when I interact with some white women, my body doesn't know if it's safe. So when I interacted with her, it felt weird. And then she told me her story, and I said, wait, you teach white women to not be racist? And I think I hugged you. I don't know if I hugged you in the moment. I don't know what I did. I was like, I think we need to sit down and have a heart to heart because I have some things I need to understand. And from that moment, we both like, I don't know if we've cried together yet, Karen, but we've had some sessions. From that moment, we have continuously had conversations. I'll ask for her opinion, help me understand the thinking, help me understand the historical context for you. And then I would do the extra reading for me. And I've learned so much from Karen. And since then, we have worked on projects together. We always find an opportunity to work together because more of the world needs to see this. I say, Karen, people need to see us like actually like each other. And so that was a part of how we got started.
And I'm just so grateful to you, Dominique. You know, I always say this, my mentees are my best mentors. Like some people think, oh, you know, because you're older and wiser, you are the mentor. But I disagree with that. I feel like having these intergenerational across difference relationships is what I learned so much from you. And I'm so grateful for your perspective on things, and it's totally changed my perspective on things. And I especially appreciate the way that you hold me to account. When you see that I'm doing something harmful, you don't hold back. You call me in, you call me out, and that is so transformational. And I just really appreciate the way that you are with me through the long haul and through thick and thin.
Yeah, Karen, as you were saying that, I was thinking about you said, oh, when I call you out, it's not comfortable for me to do it. So,
Mm.
first of all, hopefully you all are taking away some of the key actionable takeaways. One, Karen realized she was in all white spaces and she actively immersed herself in the spaces where she wanted to learn. So we're going to have actionable takeaways throughout this entire session. So part one is start to be around the communities, listen to the discussion, get an understanding so you can organically meet people. Part two, if you see someone or hear from someone that resonates with you, well, beeline, have a conversation, initiate a coffee, try to get to learn more, be your authentic self and give them the safe space to also have their authentic self. And then find that gateway, that bridge that enables you two to have the safety to have those conversations. So Karen, let's be very clear. Let's talk about one of our examples for the interracial sisterhood event that kicked off this year, right? When we talk about making mistakes, it's inevitable. You will make a mistake and just embrace it because you are learning. And anyone who's been successful and anybody who's in education, you make mistakes and lessons are learned. You fail to get to your successful state. So if you're doing this perfectly, we would have more justice in the world. And as you can see, that's not the case. So earlier this year, Karen asked me to host an interracial sisterhood event. And obviously we're trying to pull together women with an X. So that's women from all backgrounds and gender identities and men who were allies to our community just so we can work together. Karen, do you want to talk about the intent of the event and what happened, or I can just go into the challenge we experienced?
Sure. So the intent is to intentionally create opportunities for people to meet each other across difference in a safe space, to have the hard conversations about the things that divide us, and to build relationships with each other based in trust. And I've been hosting these events since 2017 all across the country. They're called Inclusive Conversations, and that's exactly it, to unite women and our allies across difference so that we can get to know each other and work together toward our collective liberation.
Yep. And I was excited because I said, again, Karen, people need to see more of this. This isn't performative. This is organic. And I want people to feel and experience us as we can. So I got a phone call from a Black woman who I respect highly. And she said, why are you doing this event with Karen? And I was like, did you read the title of the event? Right? So there, as you can notice behind me, there's a picture of Malcolm X and Dr. King. I intentionally sit between them because I'm at the intersection. There's a time to be Malcolm and there's a time to be Martin. So it felt like a Martin opportunity for me to be with Karen. Well, somebody scrubbed Karen's website. So one thing that you'll do is, if you're going to call yourself an ally, there is no calling yourself an ally. The member of the community you say you are supporting has to give you that designation. You can't self-identify as an ally. So there was some background research done on Karen, and someone found on her website. Karen, do you want to speak to what it was? I can't remember.
I said, while my focus is on race, I'm opposed to the marginalization of all people, including white people. Because what I was speaking to is the fact that there's very real class marginalization that happens to white people that is also a form of oppression.
Which is also one of the key tactics that is happening right now in our political system, because if there is a socioeconomic disadvantage to access to knowledge, the ability to process what that information means, and then incorporate it in how you make rational decisions. We found that there was a difference there. And basically, the Black woman that reached out, there was an entire dialogue in the background that they were making me privy to, and they said, this person is not the right representative for this. And I said, wait a minute, I would not be here if that weren't the case. So now there was a pivot. I was now defending Karen from my Black friends, because if you are going to be an ally, you have to know when to defend your values and when to stop some of the madness. Rather than canceling Karen, I wanted to hear her out. So I called Karen and I said, I just found something on your website. Can you explain to me what you mean? So Hone has a class. Hone sessions are really great. We have an active listening session where someone says something to you and then you acknowledge what they're saying to ensure that you understood or that their intention was what you thought. And what Karen did was she explained to me what she just explained to you all a minute ago. And I said, okay, Here is the problem with that statement. As we are looking at addressing the needs of the African American community, to also say we're looking at addressing the needs of the white community almost makes them equal. And at this point, the disproportionate things that are happening to us are not the same. I said, what you are speaking towards, because I grew up in the Midwest, I saw classism just as a regular person, not as like a Black person. Like there's a sense of elitism in certain parts of this nation. And if you are a hardworking family, we didn't like to see that. And I said, what you were speaking towards is classism. So I said, maybe you can change the language to say you go against all marginalized, communities, including those that are affected by classism, sexism, anti-Semitism. I said, just put a list of isms, and then we don't make it a white-Black thing. And then she updated her site that same, well, one, she said, oh, I get it now. Not that everybody's always going to understand, but she had the space and the opportunity to understand. She updated her site, and then we moved forward with our event. And a lot of the Black women who were upset or thought they were upset came to the event and said, I'm glad that I came. So now let's dissect that. Karen, would you add anything to that? Add any color before we go through all the actionable takeaways from that experience?
I think that's a great explanation of exactly what happened. I do have one actionable takeaway that I would add to what you were saying before about how I had to initiate our relationship. I would just add, listen to what Dominique said about her mental state was when she saw this white woman beelining toward her. It was one of, I need to protect myself from her. So I invite white allies to initiate these relationships. I think that's very important. And before you initiate the relationship, you need to know how to emotionally self-regulate so that you don't cause harm, so that you earn trust, and that you've done your background research. So I'm not coming and asking Dominique, how can I be an ally to Black women? I've read the Medium posts on how to be an ally to Black women. I read Minda Hart's book. I read Audre Lorde. I know all of those things. And I also know that from Dominique's perspective, I could cause her a lot of harm. So I am super conscious of the way that I interact with her to not cause harm. And when I do cause harm, to signal to Dominique, if you tell me I'm causing harm, I will thank you for it. And I will convert on that feedback. I'm not going to get defensive, deny, defend, or any of those things. This is very important because that is what is going to create the psychological safety for Dominique in this situation to not be like, oh, let me cancel Karen, but instead let me call Karen and empathetically listen to her so that we can correct this situation.
Yes, yes. And that was pretty much, there was a moment where if you do have a friend who is a true ally, this is you being an ally to them too. My privilege in this space was, as a Black woman, we get to determine whether or not we want to have you be an ally. And then for me, within my community, I get to choose who I'm an ally with. My Black women peers, or if you are, I don't care if you're gay, white, man, whatever your community is that you are defending or trying to be an ally within, you are still an individual. You get to choose how you want to reflect yourself as a member of that community. And I chose to give Karen the benefit of the doubt, even with the pressures of my community. So I need you to, actionable takeaway number 6 at this point is probably think about you in this moment. What do you think is the right thing to do? And then acting on it. And I'm sure that there are more takeaways, but I want to hop over to a workplace example, which is the major point for this conversation. What does it look like in the workplace? And I'll give an example that I experienced about 7 months ago. I almost never participate in women's groups. And that's just my story. I can't speak to others. And the reason why I don't is because they tend to over-index in the white experience, where a lot of my white women peers are trying to get board seats and they're trying to get in the C-suite room. And I'm like, I can't even get my manager to acknowledge my hair. You're trying to get in a board seat? I can't even. So the needs were different, and so it felt like the women's community wasn't really for everyone. So because I was conscious of my bias or the fear of that, I actively sought out the head of the women's group. And I literally tell myself, it's like I have a little coaching session. I'm like, okay, Dominique, I know we don't want to do this, but we have to. So that's actionable takeaway number one. It's uncomfortable, but necessary to do this work. So I contacted the woman who was the head of the women's group, and I asked her to just tell me her strategy. I don't want to make any assumptions. Just tell me what you're thinking about doing this year. And I listened, and my smile adjusted with every word that came out of her mouth. I was waiting, I was looking for her bringing in other ERGs because there are women in the other ERGs. So I'm sure she would have thought to go to the other employee resource groups, which are ERGs. And none of that happened. The whole storyline, I didn't see myself in her women's strategy. And she was the head of the women's group, and she was talking to another woman. So by the end of it, I said, well, when will you integrate or focus on the intersectionality of women of color, LGBTQ women, women in the military, women with disabilities? When are we? And she said, "Oh, we haven't gotten that far yet." And the rage in my chest, right? I'm a Black woman, so I can never show it without being characterized as, "Oh, why are you so mad?" The rage was that she had the privilege to tell me we could wait to service the justice of the other women that needed that support. I do not remember how I responded, actually. I think I felt defeated. On that day, I didn't have the psychological strength to keep combating that expression. So, what I would say is in the workplace, one, I need you to recognize your privilege in all of its forms, in all of its forms. I am a fully functioning woman. There are other people who are not able-bodied in the way that I am, but I acknowledge that I might need to be a bridge for their support. I am a bisexual woman, which used to be a challenge in the lesbian community for me because I'm not a technical lesbian, but now I'm pivoting to look at trans women. Well, darn, my story was rough before, but this community right here, they really got it bad. But for that white woman, it never happened. She was very comfortable in only servicing one dimension of a collective identity. So I would ask you to use your privilege in a way that services as many representative people in that population. If you're servicing the human population, then you need to understand the diversity of that population in order to adequately represent their needs. And that's where the profitability business case for diversity comes from. Not just that you hire diverse people, but that you actually include their perspectives and how you drive the business. So I'm going to pause there, and Karen, get any additional takeaway from you and just that very small example. Any thoughts about
Yes.
it?
I would say that just that very small example is taking place at companies all across our country, that each of the ERGs is like a little fiefdom of its particular interest group. And the women's ERG is dominated by white women, and women who have other marginalized identities are in the ERGs with the folks from that marginalized identity. And instead of everybody collaborating and working toward our collective liberation and having each other's backs and learning each other's stories and understanding how we can all support one another to transform the workplace, we're just replicating the same white cishet male power dynamics
Yeah.
amongst each other. And this is exactly what Audre Lorde told us after women didn't get the Equal Rights Amendment. She gave a speech and she said, our greatest challenge is that we have no patterns of relating across difference as equals. We only know how to relate across each other in hierarchy. So it's good to be white, it's bad to be Black. It's good to be a man, it's bad to be a woman. It's good to be straight, it's bad to be queer, et cetera, et cetera. And so when we get together, instead of saying, okay, I recognize there's a generational difference between you and me, Dominique, and there's a difference in where we grew up and how we grew up, and there's a difference in our race and in our sexual orientation. I see all those things, and I'm still going to relate with you as my equal, as my sister. And that's going to allow us to build the kind of unity that we need to be able to fight in this fight, because this patriarchy is not going down without a struggle, folks. Power concedes nothing without a demand. And all of us being divided from each other is exactly how this small group has maintained power for generations, for 400 years, okay? And now they see the demographics are shifting, we're becoming a majority people of color society, and they are freaking out. How can we grasp onto our power ever tighter? So the only thing that we have to do is realize, white women, if we realize ourselves as women, as people who have been marginalized, and instead of striving for equality with white men in the workplace, say, let me use my relatively privileged status within the workplace to argue for and support the collective liberation of everybody with a marginalized identity. We are the majority. We are the majority. When we unite forces, we are the majority in the workplace. Women are graduating from college at higher rates than men. We're entering the workforce at higher rates than men. But we start to peter out, and we're not achieving the highest level. We're not advancing to the highest level because we are trying to do it as individuals and not as collective. And that is what is preventing us from ascending.
And that's all of us. I mean, the reason why, listen, if you're a white person on this call and you feel attacked, I think you missed the point. This is not about attacking you. It is about acknowledging facts. Now, there's one thing to acknowledge a fact, and then there's another thing to acknowledge your feelings about the fact. What I need you to do now is to acknowledge the facts, and then you get to choose the role you're going to play. So that is to my white allies and listeners. To everyone on this call, don't be the crab in the barrel. Don't be the crab in the barrel. So somebody said, Karen, your name is not popular in the Black community right now. You rock, girl. This is common sense, Karen. That is why I actively chose her. Her name happened to be Karen Fleshman, Esquire, but she was cool anyway. She is cool on top of being amazing. So let's just throw that out there. But don't be the crab in the barrel. And by that, I mean, if you're striving to get to the top and you're kicking other people down along the way, you're almost like the antithesis of what it means to have the United States of America. Like if you're a true American, I love what America could be. I'm saddened by what it is. I love business, which is why I chose it. I love the transactional nature because there are rules and regulations that people are forced to respect each other. But I don't like what it is becoming. So as an individual, what are you doing to make sure that when you look to your left and your right, if you are standing up for Black people, are you standing up for also Black queer people? If you are standing up for women, are you standing up for all versions of women? If you are I don't know when people stand up for men, but because they don't really need to be stood up for. But if you happen to be in a scenario, are you also including Black men in those discussions? Or are you comfortable looking down and noticing that everybody else is under you? That's what we're trying to fight. If we're all equal, then we're all not only creating the innovation and creativity we seek, but we actually like each other more than we think. Like if you start to get these friendships, you'll see. So in the interest of time, it is 1:46. There are a couple of the things that they wanted to address. And one question we get a lot, Karen, is people are like, I'm so afraid to say anything. I don't want to say anything. That's part one. And then people don't want to do this whole call out. I don't want to call it out. Well, I'm going to tell you something. If you're in a meeting, and I've heard many examples of this, especially now, and they're like, well, we need to have more diversity. Well, we're not lowering our standards for more diversity. First, that is a microaggression, which assumes that by including people that don't look like you, you are now watering down your policies. And somebody says, well, if they didn't go to an Ivy League school, then clearly we have to address it. Well, now let's go to the policy. Who wrote the rules? Were the rules inclusive to begin with? Because it's really an infrastructure problem. How we built it in the beginning was wrong. So I don't want to talk about lowering the standard. I want to talk about the standard. I mean, let's get to the essence of the problem. So if you're one of those people that's like, we don't want to lower our standards, I'm going to ask you to question your standard. Karen, any other thoughts or something you would like to add to that? I have examples for days, but I want to get your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think this myth of meritocracy, and that how where you land in life is determined through your own hard work and educational striving alone is extremely toxic and harmful. And I talk about this all the time, that the reason why I am a college graduate homeowner is because my great grandfather got off the boat from France, made his way to Western Nebraska, and through the Homestead Act acquired 360 acres of land for which he paid $60. And like me, there are 46 million Americans who can trace our middle class status to the Homestead Act. It's not just that, it's redlining, it's all these decades of segregationist, racist
Yep.
discrimination that led for me to have this college education and to own this home.
Karen,
Now,
Karen, can I
mhm,
offer an and at the same time that Karen is having that experience, my grandmother just revealed to me before she passed last month that our family were we were entrepreneurs in Selma, Alabama, but as she was growing up, she still had to hide under her bed from the KKK. When my grandfather died, he only had a third grade education, but he was the entrepreneur for the entire neighborhood. It didn't matter what his education was, but he couldn't get access to education. And when he died, my grandmother had to take care, my great grandmother had to take care of the store, but the white customers who had a tab didn't pay their tab. So the poverty that it created 3 generations ago, I am now one of the few college grads because I didn't have a house, because we didn't have money, because we lost our home, because we lost our store, because of the discrimination we faced. And here we are with Karen having a very opposite experience. So Karen, I just wanted to call that out because to be the recipient and have two very different experiences, and see it show up in the workplace as a capability issue versus an equality and access to opportunity issue, it reframes the story, and that is not the truth. The truth is that it's been not fair from the beginning, and so the meritocracy is a lie. Sorry, Karen, continue.
no, that's exactly the point. So then, how do we address that in the workplace and not wind up replicating that?
Right.
That becomes the issue. And it comes from us working together to ensure equality of access for many more people. So one of the things you'll see on my website is that I don't believe that we should have job requirements that list a college degree as a requirement when college degrees remain out of access for so many people. And I'm a huge proponent of vocational education. Like, I feel like, how did vocational education get downgraded as something? Like, we need people. If more people had employable skills, we would be such a stronger society, and especially for men. I'm a huge proponent of as a feminist, I want men to have great jobs and to be able to feel, manly and doing their work,
Whatever
and
that means. Whatever that
whatever
means.
that means.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. And so, yeah, we just have to learn each other's stories. And
Yes.
that's why having an opportunity like today when we can talk. And as for hashtag Karen, I think this is not something for white women to turn away from or to call a slur. Hashtag Karen is a very important mirror that we all need to look at. What is driving this behavior of white women? You see these images of the women, they look so miserable, so angry, so alone, so threatened by a person of color having agency, of a person of color enjoying themselves. okay? And this desire, oh, I need to jump in there and intervene and stop that person from feeling that way. And that by somehow doing that, I'm gonna make myself feel better. No, you're not gonna make yourself feel better. You're only gonna make yourself feel more miserable, more isolated. And we have to stop doing this harm, white women, and seek what makes us happy. Being in community, what makes us happy? Working together. What makes us happy? Being free and safe and not causing harm.
And we're free and we're safe when everybody is free and safe. Nobody is free and safe if everybody is not free and safe. And because we are winding down, and I know we have questions we haven't gotten to, earlier I gave the example of what happens when someone says that in a meeting. You
Yes.
have to be brave enough to say, that's actually a microaggression. It's not true. Or you don't have to call it a microaggression, but in the meeting, somebody has to say something. And if you're sitting there and you know it's wrong, that is what we need. That is active allyship. That is active allyship. Performative allyship is to say that you are an ally and you don't say anything in those meetings. When you hear something said about a person of color, when you hear something said about a woman, when somebody is interrupted in the meeting, when somebody's opinion is ignored and somebody comes right behind them and says the exact same opinion, if you hear and acknowledge and recognize and see these things and you don't say anything, you are complicit in the violence that is created both psychologically and emotionally and physically in our nation right now. You are a part of the problem when you don't use your voice. So when we talk about performative, it's the label of being there when needed. And when the call comes, you can't be found. That was a call, and we needed you to speak up. Part two is active allyship is doing something. Effective allyship is doing it until you see the outcome you started for. So if you started marching for Black Lives Matter, then you continue to work. It might not be a march today. It might be speaking up in the meeting and making sure that your company maintains its racial equity statement that it made last month and hasn't created the follow-up actions to dictate that you are now the ally in the room that's going to help see it through. You're the one that helps to influence that. So when we talk about active, it's the work that you do. And in order to be effective, it is the follow through of that work. If it seems daunting, imagine how heavy it has been for every woman you ever met that has fought so hard to get to the top that she started to mirror male behavior. Imagine how daunting it is for every person of color who simply just wants to be seen as human. Imagine what it is for every LGBTQ member of a community that says, my love is equally as valuable as your love. Imagine what it is for somebody in the Jewish or the Muslim community to say that our practices, our way of life, who we are, is not a threat to your existence and that we are equally as valuable as you. What if we all just, whatever stress you think you're enduring, just take a moment to check your privilege and to be open to the idea that you can work with your allies and help to solve the problem, because there's somebody working on your behalf that you never asked them to. And I need you to do the same. Karen, any really last note? I know we didn't get to a Q&A, but I'm trying to do several things as we go through the content.
Yeah, I would just say, we think, oh, if I say something or do something, it's going to be this horrible thing and I'm going to get all this pushback. But honestly, you will get so much appreciation. You will get so much, and it's just like a muscle,
That's not why you do it. That's not why you're doing it. But the fear of rejection is not exactly what you think it'll be. Go ahead, Karen.
Exactly. You're not doing it in order to get appreciation, but I'm just saying in the balance of things, the amount of positive you will receive from speaking out far outweighs the amount of negative that you will receive. And you will also feel it's like a muscle. The first time you use it, it's really weak and it's kind of hard, and you feel like, oh, I just wish a big hole would open up and swallow me. But the third time you do it, you're like, okay, I got this now. And then by the sixth time you do it, it's second nature and you're doing it. It's the hardest time is to do it the first time, but just keep doing it.
That is absolutely true. That is, I mean, this work takes practice. I'd like to apologize for those who we weren't able to get to the Q&A, but I think the nature of the content of our story was very important because hopefully it answered some of your questions. But if you do want to continue this discussion and you would like to learn more, please find Karen. Karen, what's your website?
RacyConversations.com.
And you're also Karen at KarenFleshman.com?
Yes.
Karen's story is awesome, and I think you should go to see her story, invite her to your companies to have these tough conversations because she is the ally we need. I am also a DEI consultant at we360model.com. And I also am a facilitator here at home. So if you want to have the tough discussion and build that strategy with your team, you can do that. But one question for you is, what is your one commitment for this week? So now that you've sat in this allyship session, you've probably gone to an unconscious bias training. You might feel like you get it now. So what are you going to do about it? And I'm going to ask of you, my commitment is to continue to use my voice when others are afraid to until they have the strength to use their own. Okay? That is the one commitment you can always guarantee I'll use. Karen, what is your commitment to this journey?
My commitment is to vote. I've already voted, but to continue doing outreach to encourage more people to vote, and to also, engage in civil disobedience to ensure that the outcome of the election is honored.
Yes. And for you in the office, in the workplace, what is your one commitment? And you can have 10, but I'm only asking for one. It's the one I need you to start doing in your next remote work meeting. It's being attentive in the meetings now because you don't have the background or space. I would love for you all to focus on that. And also remember that home is the reason why we all are here today. I love working with the home management team because they realize that the power of this platform enables this important discourse in this moment. So if you liked today's session, then we would love for you to attend some of our other sessions. If you go to the home website, look at all of the different topics, figure out what you need for your team today. Do you need to build high trust relationships? Do you need to engage in active listening? You probably need to do all of it. So I would encourage you to go through the website and map out your company needs and align them with the home trainings that we provide so that we can get you and your teams up to speed on how to take this to the next level. Here are some of the trainings we have coming up from October 29th through November. We continue to evolve the more that you engage, so we give you the best content. And I'm just saying, come on over to the home family so we can take this to the next level. Karen, you are my sister. You are my friend. I love you. Thank you for giving me the space to see you as a person. And for joining me today as we usher in a community of people just like us. We're going to find some other folks just like us who are going to meet and then they're going to help work together. So Karen, anything you want to tell everyone before we go?
This is a lifelong journey. You never really finish. This is continuous learning, and you're going to fall down 10 times, get up 11. And we are here for you. If we can help you in any way, don't hesitate to reach out.
Don't hesitate. We are all in this together. You are not alone. So stop acting like it. We're in the United States of America. We have 330 million awesome people, even though we are not all behaving that way. One conversation could change somebody's life and could change the way they think about things. And you can be the one to start that. So thank you so much. Have a fantastic day and go be an active and effective ally. Thank you so much.